Let's go, girl.
Just tell me that I can and show you things that you couldn't believe.
Let's go, girl.
Just tell me that I can and show you things that you couldn't believe.
Let's go. It is Women Talking Football, WTF for short, not to be confused with WFT. We are the Women, a pair, a trifecta of producers for Dave Campbell's Texas Football and Dave Campbell's Texan Live. We'll start off over here. I'm the executive producer. My name is Ashley Pickle. Sitting to my right, it is our associate producer, Miss Mallory Hartley.
Hey, everyone. How's it going?
Going well. And then sitting in the control room over there, our other associate producer, Miss V&A Moreno, making us sound good. V, how is it going?
It is going pretty good. How are y'all?
Doing well. Excited for a big, beefy episode of WTF. Episode number 73. And a lot to get to today as we are in now the depths of the football season. Week 2 has come around. Week 1 has concluded. A lot of action to talk about there. But week 2, we'll go ahead and reveal our spotlight games for Dave Campbell's Texas Football tonight, our Friday night programming, where we choose 6 games across the Lone Star State to make our key spotlight games. Obviously, tons of other highlights coming in from games all across the Lone Star State, but these 6 are the ones you're going to want to keep your eye on Dave Campbell's Texan Live. Then in the back half of the show, how about we talk some Super Centex? We're making our way down I-35 to talk about a very deep region of the state. We will first hear from Waco Tribune Herald sports writer DJ Ramirez, actually the home newspaper of our very own namesake in Mr. Dave Campbell himself. That's where he started his career before he gave us an opportunity to have a job here. So we'll talk with DJ. Super excited to talk to her. Then we will go through the rest of our breakdown for the ranked teams in the Super Centex region. Throwing a little bit of a wrench in it, we're going to talk about, where'd they go? A lot of teams in the Super Centex that we've heard of for the past couple of years that are not in the rankings right now. Let's look at what their state is and maybe why they're not there and how can they get back up there. Then we'll do players to watch and, of course, round it all out with stonks.
Stonks. I love it.
Week 1.
The BB show.
Went well.
Week 1
lot
did
of
go well.
really good games.
A lot of really, really good games. I think from a viewer's perspective, I think the show looked fantastic, and I love the chemistry that you, Tepper, and Ish have on the desk. I think it went...
I just don't like them, so I think that comes across well.
Yeah, I know. But that also just made the show even better. I mean, we had... Not only did we have great talent at this, but we also had great games. I mean, Katie Dickinson was fantastic.
Absolute banger.
Denton Geyer-Alito, which is always fantastic, which... If you're just a casual Texas high school football fan, right, and you're looking at those two teams, you're looking at the 6A Division II or not 6A classification and then a 5A Division I classification, and if you're a casual fan, you're like, oh, that's going to be an easy win for the bigger team, right? But it's not ever like that. It's always such a close banger. If you remember back to last year, Alito got the upper hand in that game in a last minute walk-off field goal, I believe it was last year. And then this year, Denton Geyer gets the upper hand. It's just one of those games that's always a classic, and it's always going to be good because there's so much talent and so much, I guess, coaching history that comes with both teams.
A lot of intrigue, too, in some of the other games that maybe the scores didn't look that interesting, but a game like Columbus and Cuero, where Columbus really went out there and just laid the hammer on Cuero. Klein Cannon Cy-Fair, another one of those. And we'll get into a couple more of those teams. Let's go ahead and take a look at our Week 2 spotlight games, revealing them for Dave Campbell's Texas Football tonight. We will be live from 7:30 to 10 for free on Dave Campbell's Texan Live, and these are the games that we are super duper interested in. Starting off with a slate of Thursday games that we will be previewing or reviewing rather on Texas Football tonight. We start off in a big one in the DFW. It is Louisville and Byron Nelson. Louisville.
Love that one.
Huge win over Mansfield Summit last week,
Yes.
51-7. I'm not sure if that says more about the state of Louisville being super duper good again, or if it says more about the fact that maybe Summit is a little bit down from what they've been.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think Mansfield Summit lost a lot, but Louisville also is coming in with one of the best players in the state in Michael Fasusi. So I think that Louisville overall is just a really, really solid team.
Yeah, their sophomore quarterback, Trey Williams, looked outstanding. 284 yards of passing, 3 touchdowns in the air, and the skill players they have make that, the Fighting Farmers, a very lethal team. On the other side of that, Byron Nelson made the long road trip over to Wolfforth Friendship. There will never be a time I do not struggle with that one.
That's a tough thing to say. That's a tongue twister.
Far too many Fs.
Correct.
Can't have that many Fs in one word.
No.
But they pull out a tight one, 48-46, to take down a very good team out there in West Texas. They lost a huge senior class, but don't worry, the depth with the Wildcats there. No, Byron Nelson Wildcats? Why am I struggling with that? It's the Blue Cat. But very interested to see. This will be a huge test for them before they get into that gauntlet that is 4-6A.
Yeah, I'm interested to see kind of what Byron Nelson looks like after losing a ton. A lot of senior starters that had a lot of experience on that team. I'm interested to see what they are this year.
Absolutely. Moving on down now to the greater Houston area. We have Klein Kane taking on the Wildcats. Again, the Wildcats of
so
Willis.
Many Wildcats.
Klein Kane, we watched them absolutely annihilate Cy-Fair in week 1. Cy-Fair, a team that we had high hopes on heading into the year. And I'm not telling Cy-Fair fans to freak out here or think anything, but I think this one says a lot about how good and talented James Clancy's ball club is down there at Klein Kane, getting a 57-7 romping over Cy-Fair. They looked in midseason form, 15 starters back. The receiving core of Blaine Bullard and Max Hendricks was operating. We had questions about their junior quarterback, Zach Johnson, going into the game. He looked exceptional. The deep ball is great. The short passes inside, the scrambling out of the pocket. I think they've got something special there with that quarterback.
I absolutely do too. And I feel like they haven't been on the cusp like they have since they lost Jadon Blue a couple of years ago. And so now are they kind of finding that identity back?
Yeah, one of the newer programs there in Klein ISD. So excited to see what they do. Also excited for the opposite side of that with the Willis Wildcats. And they got a good week 1 win over Aldine Davis, 30-23. Kind of get your feet wet. The biggest question and what will be answered in this game, in my opinion, will be what is Willis's new identity after DJ Lagway has now left.
Yes.
That's what we didn't get that necessarily fully answered against Aldine Davis.
Last week, no, you won't. And this will be the week that we get those answers.
Very telling there. So that's our Thursday night slate. Let's matriculate down to Friday night lights and start off with an absolute, not able to be argued, banger in the DFW. North Crowley taking on DeSoto. Number 1, DeSoto. Number 5, North Crowley. If you like prospects, there is no place for you to be on Friday night other than Eagle Stadium in DeSoto.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I feel like they're completely different teams in the sense of, like, when you're looking at DeSoto, you're looking for skill talent, right? I mean, you've got Booby Feaster. They're riddled with them, right? But then when you look over to the North Crowley side, I'm not saying that they're not filled with skill talent, but I'm looking more at what they're doing in the trenches because they're just a big team. So it's gonna be kind of fun to see how these two teams match up against each other.
Absolutely. Chris Jimerson looked pretty good for North Crowley last year. DeSoto absolutely pummeled the team out of Georgia. It wasn't correct. It wasn't even a fair fight there, 70-0. This will be the real test for North Crowley, as we saw some high points during their week 1 win against Lancaster last week. But there were some struggles, and I'm interested to see. Most of it was them shooting themselves in the foot. A lot of uncharacteristic penalties out of Ray Gates Ball Club.
Yeah, and I think that people expected that game to be more lopsided in North Crowley's favor because Lancaster is pumping up a classification, right? Because they were down in the 5A ranks. So I don't know if that necessarily says more about Lancaster or North Crowley, but I guess we'll see this week against a pretty fair opponent.
I want to apologize too. I said all of that stuff about Klein Kane. Willis is playing Kine Collins. I got the Klein schools mixed up. So anyway, our Thursday night spotlight game, Willis and Klein Collins. It's still week 2. We're getting into this. Although I was super impressed by Klein Kane. Everything I said about Klein Kane stands.
Absolutely. I was like, I know it's one of the Klein schools.
But Klein Collins actually taking on Willis. Again, a very good test for this Willis ball club that we're trying to figure out what they look like without DJ Lagway. Moving on into a tasty non-district matchup in Beast, Texas. The Gilmer Buckeyes, the reigning 4A Division 1 state, 4A Division 2 state champions, taking on the Bulldogs of Tyler Chapel Hill. Okay, so weird. Let's start off with Chapel Hill. They got a huge win last week. They looked incredible.
Against Kilgore, yeah.
Yeah, looked very good. No, Kilgore beat Carthage.
Jasper.
I
get those. Jasper. I knew I was going to make that mistake. Jasper. That's an bigger win.
Yes. So a very, very good outing. Ricky Stewart, Demetrius Brisbane, they were playing like they had something to prove last week. You remember the last time that we had seen the two of them, they got shut out by Anna in the state title, did not set well with them. Well, the Baylor commit and the Texas commit looked like that dynamic duo that we've been watching since they were sophomores. They looked absolutely incredible. Then there was Gilmer, and I thought I was looking at this score wrong when I first saw it. They go out and they lose 22-15 against Longview Pine Tree.
And you're like, who's Longview Pine Tree?
And you're going, wait, should that be the Longview Lobos? And it was like, no, it was Longview Pine Tree. Gilmer has a tendency to do this. If you remember, last year they lost 71-53 against Chapel Hill in week 1. They lost 24-23 in a tight one against Kilgore. And then they go on and they lose a couple weeks later, 63-28 against Pleasant Grove. So, this has happened before, and then they rattled off one of the toughest playoff runs to go and win the state championship. Don't fret that much if you're Gilmer. I think that there is a lot of things that are interesting about this. They have a new quarterback this year. They have Brady McCown, who moved in from Jacksonville. Moved in from Jacksonville, which means that Caden Tennyson, who is still there and is in his senior year, has now moved out to being wide receiver, which is, if you remember in the Wayback Machine, where he actually started off with Gilmer, they just ended up needing a quarterback. So very interested to see if Brady gets back into it this week and they start looking good against Chapel Hill. Okay, maybe it was week 1 jitters. You're with a new team. You have your guys now. You're ready to go. If the second quarter rolls around, if the third quarter rolls around, and Gilmer is not looking anywhere near the level that they need to against Chapel Hill, do they switch Caden Tennyson back over? So very interested to see that portion of it. Moving on now to another cross-regional matchup. We have the Rockwall Yellow Jackets taking on the Lake Travis Cavaliers. Lake Travis looking absolutely exceptional in their week 1 game against Arlington Martin up in Choctaw Stadium, 51-12. Really took it to him. Chaston Ditta looked
I really like him. I think he's a great quarterback.
Looked great. He went 12 for 21, 146 yards, 2 passing touchdowns. He had 10 yards on the ground. They've got a really good plethora of wide receivers out there. Junior running back Van Hopping looked very good too. I think that they really need kind of that offensive balance. Chaston Ditta has really stepped up to see that normal Lake Travis quarterback that we're looking for, but interested in to see them. On the other side of it, the 18th ranked Rockwall Yellow Jackets. Landon Locke is a senior now. That name might ring a bell, as his brother Braden Locke was the quarterback for Rockwall back in the day. Both now Wisconsin commits. Braden is there. Landon is there. Excited to see what Coach Trey Brooks does with his Rockwall Yellow Jackets squad. This will be a good barometer for them. Moving on now down to, if you're in the Houston area, this is the game that you're going to want to keep your eyes on, and that is Atascocita and Katy. Number 9, the Atascocita Eagles coming in to number 11, the Katy Tigers. Atascocita kind of called the fraud alert on Houston Lamar last week, winning 35-7. Lamar was a state-ranked team, and they were number 23 at the time, and they just had their way with him. Carde Mack looked incredible. Just their entire team looked very well-rounded in week 1. Katy, on the other side, almost chalked it up to Dickinson.
Yeah, that was such a good game. I mean, that was not one of our spotlight games from last week, but that was one that we threw on because we saw that the score was so close. And that was really not even one that we really had on our radar. But the fact that it was so close, I mean, does that bring up some question marks?
Says a lot about Dickinson being a much better team maybe than we anticipated, but a 41-37 win to squeeze it out there at the end for Gary Joseph's squad. He did the thing that he always does. He dialed up a couple play actions, put him in the I formation, and was able to squeeze you until the very end and go ahead and get the dub. The one thing was a lot of special teams mistakes for Katy. It's a young ball club. They've got some solid running game with Tremaine Hill. That will pay dividends, but they're going to have to shore up some of those young mistakes if they're going to go up against an Atascocita team. Not to mention, Atascocita beat Katy for the first time in program history last year.
And this is an Atascocita team that's veteran, too. I mean, they've got a lot of returning players, so they're not going to be making those mistakes that maybe Katy did in the first week.
Absolutely. Here is your wild-ass game of the week. Anna, a 5A Division II program, taking on 3A's Gunner. Okay? When you look at the enrollment for this, Anna has 4.11 times the number of kids that Gunner has.
That's crazy to think about, that these two teams are matching up together.
Wild.
I mean, have you actually, and here's a question that I'm actually going to ask because I don't know the answer to this. Have we taken a look at how many players are on each roster and put them together? Because there's got to be a huge difference in that too. I mean, obviously we're going to talk about the depth and if that could be, is that going to be a concern for Gunner? But like, I'd love to see the raw numbers of how many players they have on each roster because I'm sure there's a big difference.
Oh yeah, no, it's gonna be a massive number. I can get that number to you later on in the show. I do know where to look for that. But this one is going to be fantastic. Gunner obviously being a program that no one will even play in their division because they are so good. This will be a huge step up for them to see if they can take this on. I do think that the most interesting part of this game will be watching the Gunner defense go up against Ziondre Williams. This is by far the best quarterback that they're going to see. It will be incredibly interesting to see how they are able to control them. I think their defensive line is looking really good on the Gunner side. It's going to be
Colin Peacock too.
Absolutely. It's going to be interesting to see that secondary. They are going to want to hold the ball. They're going to want to run the time out. If they can do that and control the clock, Gunner has a decent shot. I would say that Anna's the favorite, but I wouldn't be shocked if Gunner won.
No,
Gunner won.
I don't either. And again, I think for me, it's just a kind of concern of depth. Because Gunner's got unbelievable players that are going to be able to last 4 quarters, but is Anna punching up 2 classifications? Is that going to be, are they going to wear them down?
Right.
And that's my concern for that game.
Absolutely.
But it'll be close. I think it'll be a good game regardless.
I'm so excited for that one. If I had to put one that I'm like super just intrigued about, it's definitely that one. And then rounding it all out, it is our last and final spotlight game of week 2 on Dave Campbell's Texas Football Tonight. And that means that it's time for the Fan Choice Awards. We put the poll up on TexasFootball.com every single week. You can look on our social media channels to find that link so you can go and vote for our 6th and final spotlight game, in which the fans voted. It is Silsbee versus Little Cypress Mauriceville. This one, a Southeast Texas matchup that we were all super excited about. Super excited that y'all picked this one. Very excited to watch the star talent and the hard-hitting football that this one's about to be. Yeah,
I'm really interested to see what Silsbee is without Draylon Miller.
Yes.
Because I think that's been everybody's question. Was he the guy last year for this team? And can these other playmakers that we know that they have, can they step up in his place and not miss a beat this year? And then LCM, yeah, they're big. I love this team. I think they're really big. It's going to be fun to see the star power go against, like you said, the big guys up front for LCM.
Absolutely. So great job on the fan pick. And there it is, our 6 spotlight games and 2 Thursday night recap games for Dave Campbell's Texas Football Tonight. We hope you will join us on TexanLive.com. You can watch it on our YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter for free from 7:30 to 10 every single Friday night. It was a blast last weekend. We look forward to bringing back the same great coverage this week with these incredible matchup games. So there is that. Moving on now to our Central Texas breakdown. Before we get into that and we bring on DJ Ramirez from the Waco Tribune Herald, we want to go ahead and toss it over to our sponsors.
hot days. Call for cold coffee. So grab great tasting community coffee, make your favorite cold beverage, and get your chill on all season long. Family owned since 1919, Community Coffee has spent 5 generations roasting blends right here in the USA. Shop now or find it near you at communitycoffee.com.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Potter, Executive Director of Be Well Texas. Too many people are struggling alone these days, and alcohol and drug deaths are increasing. We started Be Well Texas to offer high-quality, science-based addiction treatment and recovery services anywhere, even at home. We provide compassionate, caring support, virtually or in person. In many cases, there is no cost for treatment if you don't have insurance. Really. Welcome to Be Well Texas. We're glad you're here.
Hey DFW residents, get your grocery essentials in minutes, not
And
hours or
welcome
days.
back in to Women Talking Football. It is time to break down the Super Centex, one of our favorite regions in the state. And no one better to talk about the Super Centex than DJ Ramirez from the Waco Tribune Herald. DJ, thank you so much for hopping on with us. How are you?
I'm doing all right. How are y'all today?
Doing well. We were saying it's so cool that you work for the Waco Trib, because that's actually where Dave Campbell got his start. So a close to home spot for us. When we bring people on, we love to have them tell us a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and what led you over to the Waco Trib.
Yeah, well, I mean, I spent most of my childhood in North Houston, Aldine for all my H-Town people. And then my family had to move out to Louisiana when I was in middle school, so that's where I graduated from high school before coming over to Waco to go to Baylor, actually. And I was working for my high school yearbook, putting together pages, and gravitated towards sports. I was never super athletic. Can't say that I ever made it past JV, but I always really loved writing, and so that was kind of something I was drawn to. And I got to Baylor, majored in journalism, worked for the student newspaper, the Baylor Lariat, and was the sports editor there, where I met Bryce Cherry, who's the sports editor of the Waco Trib. And then after I graduated in the spring of 21, I went to work an internship with the Big 12 for a year. And while I was there, Bryce shot me a text and was like, hey, we might have a position open by the time the summer rolls around. So why don't you send me your resume and some clips and stuff? And so, I mean, as soon as, the next summer came around, I was back in Waco and getting ready for high school football season.
And that we were doing the same exact thing, but week 1 is finally under our belts. Thank goodness. What a crazy week it was. Were there any shocking upsets or maybe surprises down in the Super Centex area that made you go, I might need to take a second look? I can tell you one, Franklin upsetting China Spring. I think that was a huge upset on Franklin's behalf.
Well, I guess I was at that game. I was covering that game that weekend, and I don't really think that it was so much a surprise that Franklin was able to beat China Spring, but it was more that, China Spring is in a way reloading. I mean, you lose a veteran kind of seasoned quarterback in Cash McCollum, right? Who's had kind of, he comes in and he's got this sort of quiet but imposing presence. And, when he came into China Spring, he really earned his spot, right? Like, he didn't come over from Waverly and expected that he was going to be the quarterback. He came in, built relationships. He really built that leadership aspect, and because the talent was already there. And it's not that Matthew Battles doesn't have the talent or the athleticism, or hasn't built the chemistry with the team, but he's definitely, I think, still going to have to learn a little bit of what it takes to be, the guy under center, to be the veteran, because he's had the reps, but he doesn't have that sort of imposing presence that Cash McCollum did. And then some of these other kids are just young. They're just going to have to learn. And that's just something that is going to take time. Obviously, the first week of the season is always going to be, there's always going to be mistakes. There's always going to be some things that you have to clean up. But I think in the long run, China Spring is going to, get back on track. But I am not surprised that Franklin beat them. Franklin's a good team. They still have a lot of talent. They were they have a really good running back. I'm trying to remember how to say his name right. But yeah, he was just really hard to stop. And, they ended up making less mistakes in that game.
Absolutely. And it's funny because, you talk about it, obviously, China Spring, a very young team, very capable under good coaching there with Tyler Beatty to be able to get back to where they need to be. It seems like there's an overwhelming presence of those type of teams in the Super Centex right now. China Spring being one of them. You look at a team like Lorena and Temple. Out of any of those teams that are typically in the statewide spotlight that might just have a couple of growing pains in this week 1 through 4 type of scenario, which one of those teams do you think personally has the best shot to really break out of this funk pretty early on and get back on the normal track that we're used to seeing them on?
Well, obviously China Spring, like I said, just if you clean up some things, you get some more reps with some guys, you're going to be great. Same thing with Lorena. I feel like they definitely had more holes to fill in terms of they lost Braylon Henry, who had a historic season last year, and have a lot of really young guys also stepping in. They had, I think, their opening game was more of trying to get those younger kids who have never really been in those positions before to understand that, when you make mistakes against a good team, it's going to hurt you. So I think those are two teams that are going to get back on track eventually. It's just not going to be instantaneous, right? There's going to be some learning, some growing going on. There's not very many teams that I can think of, really shocked or I feel like aren't going to, do the things that they're usually good at.
No, I think you're completely right. And big school ball there, China Spring, like you mentioned, Temple definitely going to get back on track. But let me tell you who is already on track, and that's small school ball, especially in Class 1A. Let's look at 1A Division 1. You've got number 1, Gordon, who won state last year, number 2, Abbott, and number 3, Jonesboro. And then dropping down a division in 1A Division 2, you got number 2, Richland Springs, 3, Oglesby, who was a state runner-up last year, and number 6, Cherokee. Small school obviously is the name of the game down there in the Super Centex. Which kind of teams are you looking out for? And maybe that's not in Class 1A, but what teams are you looking out for to maybe make that another state run?
If we're going to stick with 1A, I think Abbott is never a team you want to doubt. And I kind of really bit myself this week by picking against them when they played Oglesby. I was thinking Oglesby coming back from, that state title game that they were going to be hungry to start, the season off on the right foot, which I'm not saying that they weren't. They definitely were. But Abbott's also a team that's used to being successful. And, nobody likes to lose, but especially not the Abbott Panthers. They have so much tradition. And they're not really changing a lot with the, coaching change, because Kyle Crawford has been there his whole life, right? And he's taking over for his dad, so that's not really going to be they're not going to do anything different. They're just doing the things that they know how to do well, exceptionally well. So Abbott for sure is a team that I expect to see deep in the playoffs. 2A, there's a lot of great 2A teams around this area. Axtell is one we're looking at for sure. They were coming off of a 10-0 year in the regular season last year where they won the district championship, and then kind of, were, to most people's surprise, out in the first round of playoffs. And so talking to Coach Craig Horn before the season, he was talking about how, they kind of weren't thinking about playoffs during the regular season. They wanted to win the district championship, and they kind of figured everything else would take care of itself. And so this year they really wanted to build a team that was playoff ready. And, they definitely challenged themselves a little bit more in their non-district schedule. And so they're definitely a team that's going to be good. I think, Crawford, Marlin, Riesel, those are teams that in that district that used to be the district that Valley Mills, which is now in the district that Axel was in. And so, they're going to be pretty good. And at the 3A level, Whitney is coming off of a win over Mart. So, and obviously they had more depth in that, but I think it's definitely a good statement to make to come out and get a strong, solid win against, a former state champion. So, a lot of really great programs around this area, and it's exciting to get to go and watch them play.
Well, there she is. She's DJ Ramirez with the Waco Tribune Herald. You can follow her on Twitter at @DJ_Ramirez. DJ, thank you so much for hopping on. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to reading all your coverage there in the Waco Tribune.
All right. Thank you so much.
There she goes, DJ Ramirez. Love what she said about Axel and Coach Craig Horn. He was formerly at Italy, did great things there for the Gladiators, then moved down to Axel instantly into a 10-0 season. I mean, he is truly, he's a man of numbers. If you've ever had the opportunity to talk to Craig Horn, you know that. But just really a special coach there, and one we look forward to seeing what they can end up doing. Well, she talked a lot about some of those bigger teams, so let's go ahead and get into that. Our regional breakdown of the Super Centex. Here's a quick rundown of the teams that are ranked, and then we're going to get into, where'd they go, Mallory? But first off, let's talk about those, the number 8th ranked Waco La Vega Pirates in 4A Division II, coming off a 7-5 season last year. Don Hyde's squad is looking to get back to being one of those powerhouse programs in the greater Waco area. Started off real strong last week with a 45-15 win over Kennedale. Striked early. Their offensive line is very veteran. They still have some key skill players, and not to mention a lot of returners in the secondary.
Yes, and I think that's a big portion as to why they're going to be successful this year. They have a lot of key players back on both offense and defense. And it's funny because when I was going through this, it seems like last year, it's kind of like, oh, Waco La Vega should be in the where did they go section.
Yep.
But now they're like, bam, back in the rankings, back for action. It's kind of cool.
Exactly. A hard-hitting, disciplined ball club that when they start rolling, you don't want to get in their way. So excited to see what the Pirates do. We take a massive skip down to our next ranked team, and that is 2A Division II in the aforementioned Mart Panthers. Coach Kevin Hoffman and his squad honestly went and got their teeth kicked in week 1. Yeah. They played Whitney, like she said, a 3A Division I team. So again, they're punching up 3 classifications there. They're 2A Division II. They played 3A Division I. Let's not freak out about the Mart Panthers. Kevin Hoffman is on his revenge tour after 2 years in a row of falling just short. There is nothing they want more than to get back to the state championship, and if anybody can do it, quarterback DeMontrell Medlock will be the guy to get them back there.
And it's funny, when I went back and watched the, please remind me, 2020 team that won state, right? There's like a million Medlocks. It's kind of like Columbus, where there's just a bunch of Shobles, and they're all super talented, and when there's one on the team, they're going to be successful. It's kind of the same way with the Medlocks and Mark. Like, that's probably just an ode to, hey, this is going to be a successful team because you got another family member coming in who's very athletic.
Absolutely. The Medlocks have been there for a long time. They're all related in Mart, literally. Like, they will tell you, oh yeah,
Small
that's
town.
my cousin, that's my cousin. Yeah. So don't freak out about the Mart Panthers. Like, let's push the brakes. Okay, they'll go through. They'll play a tough non-district, and then welcome to Murderers Row, baby. So they are back. Moving on into the bulk of our ranked teams, and we talked about some of them, but 1A Division I, the number 1 Gordon Longhorns, after an undefeated season, state title with one of the most prolific defenses that you've probably ever seen in 6-man, with only allowing 8.9 points per game through 13 games. They have so many incredible players coming back. 5 starters on both sides of the ball. Guys like Rye Reed, Stryker Reed, they are all back and locked and loaded. If you're looking for a team to start betting that they might get back to a state championship, welcome to the Gordon Longhorns.
That was a fun team to watch last year at state. I mean, they were just so dominant on both sides of the ball. And like you said, a lot of returners, like, they're not going anywhere.
No, not at all. So Coach Mike Reed, excited for that. Also not related. Like, Stryker is related, but Rye Reed is not related.
Yeah.
But he's related to the head basketball coach, who is also Coach Reed. Anyway, talk about relatives.
I remember getting to that.
They're
date
related,
last
but they're
year,
not.
And I was like, wait, but they all have the same last name, but they're not related. How does that work?
In a small town like Gordon.
And that's the thing. It would be different if it was like there was another Hartley in Arlington,
Yeah.
Texas, right? But like in a very small town like Gordon, chances are they're gonna be related if they have the same last name.
Absolutely. We move on down to a team that obviously DJ was very high on in the Abbott Panthers. Coach Kyle Crawford taking over for his dad, one of my favorite human beings, Coach Terry Crawford.
Good human.
No droppage there. We were very excited for their week 1 game against Oglesby, who we'll talk about in a minute. Again, obviously, as you can see, different classifications, but 2 teams that we were very high on. And we actually said this would be a huge test for Abbott to see and get a gauge on where they are. They graduated some of the kids. Where are we looking at? And it was actually, let me get back to my notes here because I wrote this down courtesy of Coach Abbott. I won't tell you which one, but one of the Coach Abbotts. Oh, yeah, duh. Coach Abbott. He's basically Coach Abbott. They've been there for long enough. But Hogan Warren actually moved over to quarterback, and that was huge for them in their week 1. He's a kid that hasn't played since he was a freshman, so I think they were a little bit nervous about that move. But the best part about that is that allowed Micah Helge and Riley Sistala to be able to be a dynamic 1-2 punch in the backfield. So that is exactly how on the offensive side of the ball they were able to take down Oglesby in week 1. So very excited to watch the trio there grow together and see how Hogan morphs into a good quarterback there for the Panthers. Moving on to number 3, and that is the Jonesboro Eagles. How about that 1, 2, and 3 all coming out from the same region of the state?
Small school ball, man. That's the name of the game there.
Absolutely. Eddie Gallego's squad is back and really, really looking to kind of redo that season that they had last year. They did lose to the eventual state champion in Gordon, and so very excited to see what they do. They got a huge week 1 win, 60-13 over Abilene Christian,
which is a high school. Because
there's not the college.
Not the college.
A 1A 6-man team did not go play the Abilene Christian College, just to make that clear. I actually thought when you were doing I thought you typed that wrong on the score sheet the other day, and I was like, oh, there's got to be something that follows this, and alas, it did not.
Yeah. Both Abilene Christians lost.
Moving on to 1A Division 2, death, taxes, and never counting out Richland Springs. The Coyotes,
they're always in the run.
Back up at number 2 in our Dave Campbell's official Associated Press rankings. In his second season at the helm as head coach, Sean Rogers led his Coyotes to the state semifinals before losing to the state runner-up in the Oglesby Tigers. Junior Billy Perry will be the bell cow of this squad, both in the passing game and the running game. A really dynamic player as just a junior there. Their defense looked fantastic. Pitching a shutout against Leaky Big Springs, 56-0. They are back to the Richland Springs that everybody knows and loves.
Yes, and then they're in a district that's totally manageable for them too. So I think I would say they're going to run district and then probably make a big run in the playoffs.
I would agree with that. Number 3, the state runner-up last year in the Oglesby Tigers, and one of my favorite coaches in the state, Coach Jeb Dixon, and what he did with that program last year. They have a ton of returning talent, including, I won't spoil it too much, but of course, Kyler Fawcett, their outstanding running back that now with the departure of Grayson Rigdon has every reason to be considered arguably for the best 6-man football player playing in this season. So very excited to see how that happens. Obviously, they fell to Abbott last week, but a
You're punching up
classification
a
bigger
division. Yeah.
They have another very tough test against another larger school in May, but they're scheduling strong because they are looking to make another long playoff run and get back to AT&T Stadium. And then finally, it's Coach Zach White and his number 6 ranked Cherokee Indians. They bring back some top level running attack on the ground with Joel Valdez and Caden Houston. They are very, very young up front. It'll be interesting to see how that offensive line kind of develops and how well they're able to hold off the opposing defenses. But if they can open up holes for their 2 backs, then they should be up and running and hopefully contending for a deep run there in the playoffs. So those are the ranked teams in the Super Centex region.
Very 1A heavy, and I love that.
Absolutely. And it's funny because when we were looking at the Super Centex, we always go, oh, it's the same teams we talk about all the time. And then you start looking at the rankings and you say, wait.
China Springs not there. Lorena's not there. Temple's not there.
Where'd they go? Well, let's take a look at some of the teams that we wanted to talk about and being like, okay, here are names that you are used to seeing that are just not there. We start off in 6A in the Temple Wildcats. This is a team that just 4 years ago, they were 10-2, had some of the most highly recruited athletes.
Torin York being one of them, who is now one of the biggest studs on the Texas A&M defense.
Yes, and so there was a ton of athletes. Well, last year they basically hit rock bottom. A 1-9 season is something that does not set well around that part of the state. Those are football crazy people. It's a one-horse town. They expect a lot out of them. I am here to tell you that the offense should take a pretty good step forward this year. Cade Stewart's back at their as their senior quarterback. That he has a year under his belt. A lot of these young parts of the offense last year are back and have a good one. My question is on the defensive side of the ball. Can they get there?
Well, here, actually, I'm going to flip you. I think my questions are more on the offensive side of the ball. The defensive side of the ball, they've got playmakers everywhere. They've got 4 or 5-star prospects on the defensive side of the ball. My question is more on can quarterback Stewart, who's the son of Coach Stewart, can he take a step up? And I think it's more because the defense was really young last year. I completely understand that point. They were pretty much all sophomores, I'd say. Now they're taking that step up into the higher class. They're upperclassmen. They have that experience. I think my eyes are going to go more to the defensive side of the ball when it comes to Temple rather than the offensive side of the ball. But I do think that Stewart will take a step up, like you said. And I think they're gonna probably be sound on both sides of the ball.
I'm concerned about the defensive line. I need to see something out of that defensive line.
Fair.
That's the one that I'm a little concerned about. But again, like we said, young team last year, coming back, has more experience. Let's see before we start throwing too much dirt on Temple. But someone that just was a powerhouse for a long while and now has kind of fallen off. A newer program on the opposite side of the long-standing Temple program, a newer program down there in the Super Centex is Killeen Harker Heights. You'll remember that Coach Jerry Edwards was there, led them to their first 12-win season. Then last year was the first outgoing for Mark Umble. He was once formerly he was the first head coach of Prosper Rock Hill when it opened. Took some time off there to go back to offensive coordinating and then stepped up. He was at Lone Star as an offensive coordinator under Jeff Rayburn prior to getting that first head coaching job. So snip, snap on the head coaching jobs. But trying to come in and kind of re-get that program up to where it needed to be. They've got 7 starters returning on offense, 5 on defense. The big question is going to be the quarterback. They had a good week 1 showing, a gritty week 1 showing, pulling it out 45-43 over Cedar Park. That was good to see a team like that who was able to pull out a gritty win in week 1. I think that says a lot about the fact that they had that many returning starters on the squad. So Killeen Harker Heights is one of these programs that I think can get back to where they were. I'm not saying they're going to win state championship. They've never been there before. But I think that we might be seeing them get back into that form that we saw at the latter half of the tenure of Coach Jerry Edwards when he was there early on.
I think so too. And Mark Umble obviously is a program builder, right? He didn't necessarily find what you would define as success when it came to building Prosper Rock Hill. But obviously coming off of a 7-4 season, which is a pretty good season. I mean, you're you're making it to the playoffs at that point, right? I think they are in really, really good hands with a guy that can get them to the point that they are used to being with where they were with Coach Edwards. I
Absolutely.
really, really do. And I really like Mark Humble as a guy. I think
Yeah,
he's
good.
he's a great offensive mind, and I think he's exactly what this team needs after another good offensive mind left.
100%. Moving on down now to 4A Division 2, it's a team we've talked about a little bit, the China Spring Cougars. After going back-to-back state champions under two separate head coaches in Brian Bell and then Tyler Beatty, they raise the standards down there. And people
100%.
expect that now. It's hard to come in your first year, win a state championship, and then fall a little short next year. So obviously after Major Bowden left, then Cash McCollum came in. There's the biggest question. They've got a lot of returning starters on the offensive line that I think are going to allow Matthew Battles to hopefully step up in the way that they need him to. He's got some weapons on the outside, but all eyes are going to be on the quarterback, as it always is in China Spring, this time for a little bit of a different reason than what we've seen the past couple of years.
Well, and I think it's super interesting to take a look back at their history the last couple of years, because in 2021 they win the 4A Division 2 state title against Gilmer.
Yep.
Then they punch up a division in 4A Division 1, and then they go and do it again against Bernie.
And a first-year head coach.
And a first-year head coach, they're put into a district with Stephenville, Waxahachie Life, Lorena, a tough district, and they go and do the same thing the year after. Now they're going down a classification again in 4A Division 2. What do they look like? Like you said, post Cash McCollum, post a quarterback that they have been able to rely really heavily on for the past 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely. The other team in 4A Division 1, almost along the same storyline, oddly enough, the Lorena Leopards went out and won the state championship in 2021 under longtime head coach Ray Biles. After 30 years there at the helm, was able to grab his first state championship and then rode off into the sun as a champion forever. We love Coach Biles. Then enters Coach Kevin Johnson, who, if you remember, was principal turned head coach. He was the offensive line coach during that state championship run, but oddly enough was playing double duty, left his principal duties to go lead the Lorena Leopards squad. Not necessarily the best showing from them last year, but they do return 8 different returning starters on the defense, and that is going to be the name of the game again. This defense looked fairly well. It'll be the strong suit that they are absolutely going to rely on. The offense looked very green against Austin Regents.
Yeah,
very green.
And that's a game that you probably should have won at the end of the day. For a powerhouse like Lorena and a coach that has experience at that school, that's probably a game that you should have pulled out and win. But again, they're very green. They're a very young team. They're only going to get better, and I think they're headed absolutely in the right direction.
Yep. Moving on to our final two here in 3 Division 1. This is a little bit of an older taste, if you will, the Cameron Yo Yeomen. So Cameron Yo back in the day was a team that you could always expect to be up there. It has been a minute since Cameron Yo has been that dominant team. They've had a ton of coaching changes, and they've actually just had one this past year. So after a bad 3-7 season last year, head coach Aaron Bobineau now is at the helm. Much like the Lorena defense, they have 3 really good returning starters on the offensive line that they're going to use heavily. They lost their quarterback Braylon Drake to graduation, so being able to get back in sync, find a new signal caller, that's going to be a really big one. They lost 52-29 in week 1, and I think that for me was more disappointing in the defense than anything. I think I expected more out of that unit, and I am slightly worried that if the offense can't pick it up and the defense isn't going to be as stout early on as I would have hoped that they would have been, that makes me a little bit nervous for the Yeomen.
Yeah, I think so too. But bringing in a defensive-minded guy in Aaron, how do you say his last name?
Bobineau.
Bobineau. Okay, because he, like you said, he was the defensive coordinator at DeSoto, and this is a team that has struggled really, really bad on the defensive side of the ball in the past recent history. What better to bring in a guy that is very, very defensive-minded and can get this team where they need to go?
Absolutely. And finally, to round out the where are they? Where'd they go? It is 2A Division 1. Let's take you down to the San Saba Armadillos. Go back to 2018. They have an incredible season under, oddly enough, now Cuero head coach Jared Feacock. Then comes in our guy, Coach Aguirre. Another fantastic season in 2019. So the Armadillos, we're cooking. Okay. Last year we're at 3-7. How did the fall happen? How did we get there from here? I'll tell you what, here is something that San Saba fans should feel really, really good about, and it is district realignment. The UIL actually did them some favors this time.
Yes.
So they went from District 5 in Region 2 to now Region 4 in District 14.
Which is a very, very manageable region.
Very, well, I'm
it's
going to disagree with you there.
But here, it's a manageable region compared to Regions 2 and 3.
I don't think so. I think it's a very manageable district. The region, fair. Not so much. So last year, in their district alone, they had teams like Coleman, and then they had the state runner-up in Toller. So that's in their district alone. The region was still difficult. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But you look at where they're at now, their district is much easier. Harper, Holland, Johnson City, Thorndale, Mason. If you ask me right now, I think the district championship, if San Saba steps up in the way that we think they can, will come down between Mason and San Saba. Possibly Johnson City, possibly Thorndale. I would say that pretty solid those should be your top 4 teams in that district. So district-wise, you can have that. You can get people going in a small town like that. You can get back up to saying, hey, we're the district champs. Let's go in. Let's be the crazy man in the fight and try to start something. You get into how it would end up looking there between just the right side of the bracket, and you've got Refugio in their region. Yeah. You've got Ganado in their region.
Marlin.
I would argue that their region is no easier than it was last time, maybe even a little bit tougher in this current standpoint of where we were at. But their district, which can completely change how you head into the postseason mentally, how you're ready to go, all of that could make it an easier battle than what it would have been last year when it was 3-7 and we don't even get into the playoffs.
Right, and I think I was thinking more of Region 3 because I know Timpson's in Region 3, correct, which is now obviously a little bit easier now that Terry Bussey is gone. They're not seen as much as they were last year, but I think I was thinking more of Region 3. Region 3 is very, I would feel manageable, but yeah, Region 4 with Refugio and,
yeah, when you're going Refugio, possible Ganado, up in like all of that side of, like the whole right side of the bracket is just crazy. So ideally you stay on the left. Didn't happen. Okay, we'll go to the right.
Yeah.
But district-wise, a lot easier, and I think a big step up could come for the Armadillos there that we haven't seen in a hot minute. So there you go. Wait, where'd they go? A couple of teams that we feel like can easily get back into the groove of things. A couple teams that we think still might be a little bit down this year. We'll see. But just a very interesting look through the rankings this year that we haven't gone through in the past 2 years when we've been doing this show.
Yeah, usually, Super Centex is packed top to bottom with ranked teams and really, really talented players, which we'll talk about here in a second, but it just seems like the spotlight more is on the 180, the smaller classifications. So that's kind of exciting.
So there we go. Now we pass it over to Miss Mallory Hartley for our players to watch.
Dude, there was a ton. I had a lot of trouble narrowing this down, and one of the things that I noticed about the Super Centex is that a lot of these players that I want to talk about are younger, because a lot of them are class of 2026. They're juniors, so they've had experience at breaking out as a sophomore. Now they get 2 more years to really develop into these great players that they're going to be. It's just a super interesting region to talk about because of the younger talent that we have coming up and that we're going to see these next couple of years. Yeah, absolutely. So starting off with Temple 2026 defensive lineman Jamarian Carlton. Temple has, I mentioned this earlier when we were talking about Temple being on the rise, right? The defense, I think, is very, very stout, led by Carlton. And then you can also talk about cornerback Jason Bradford, who's also a junior. But Jamarian, he's got good frame, 6'5", 238, which makes him a great defensive lineman who can play in the interior, but also out on the edge as an edge rusher as well. In 8 games last season, he recorded 29 tackles for 4 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 1 interception, and 7 QB hurries. And again, only 8 games as a sophomore. And this dude is only going to grow. He is a beast. He's a great FBS Power 4 prospect with offers from programs like Texas and Ohio State and Texas A&M. You name it. He's got them all. It'll be really, really fun to see how much this defense grows with more of an experienced unit after a 1-9 season like we mentioned last year. I'm going to throw up the graphic here. Yay. All right, coming up next, let's talk about Lake Belton 2026 athlete Davion Peters. And I know we mentioned him last week on the show when we were talking about Spotlight games because Lake Belton was one of our Spotlight games last week. And I'm excited to talk about him because he's a player that has been on people's radar for the past year. I think he's going to have his breakout year this year, but last year he was put onto people's radar, but I don't think nearly as much because if you remember last year, you had the 5-star wide receiver in Micah Hudson. I think this is the year that he breaks out, and he's going to be quarterback Eli Mascarenas' target this year. I'm sorry if I completely butchered that, but quarterback Eli's main target this year.
Yeah, I think too. What we saw, obviously, they lost to A&M Consolidated, and that was an incredible game by A&M Consolidated. Their front line just tore up the Lake Belton defensive line, but I don't think that is anything against the superstar that Davion Peters is about to break out and be, solely because the team just looked a little lost. They just looked like, wait, we don't have our guy. What do we do? And I think it's going to take a vocal leader in Davion Peters to go, no, I am that guy. Like, trust me as much as you trusted Micah Hudson, and I think he'll get there throughout the season.
Yeah, and again, he's young. He's only a junior, so he's got a lot of room to grow. He can also play at quarterback too. Stick him in at quarterback and design up a run for him to go to do. He displays insane athletic ability, easily being one of the best players on the field, I'd say, at any moment. And of course, he's got a ton of offers already. More to come, I'm sure, in the future. Moving right along to Waco University 2026 wide receiver Landon Smith. This dude's a beast. I think I had the most fun watching his tape.
I was like, you're super high on Landon.
Yeah, London. Oh yeah, it says London. It's London, yeah. But I was super, super high on him. And then after I watched his tape, I turned around to Powers and I was like, I like this guy a lot because he flashes an insane athletic ability. And this is a program that I feel like is on the rise because Karen Johnson has taken over. This is in year 2, and this is a program that's kind of been down. But with a new head coach, I think this overall is a really, really stout team, and it's in large part due to this insane weapon that they have in Landon Smith. 876 receiving yards, 11 touchdowns, 43 rushing yards last year, and 1 touchdown. He's a deep threat who's quick and can create separation from the defender, but he can also be utilized in the screen game. And his ability to gain good yardage after the catch is insane. He's just very versatile when it comes to being a core receiver. You can use him in a lot of different spots, and he's fast, he's quick. He's a lot of fun to watch, and I think he's just a game changer for this team. And he's got plenty of FBS offers from Georgia, Texas, Oregon. Name any big program, he's probably got an offer from them. But he's only got room to grow too because he's only a junior.
Yeah, 2 seasons ago, this is a team that was 0-10. I mean, Waco U has never been the powerhouse of the greater Waco area, and this kid is a huge reason as to why. I remember we showed their final game of the regular season last year against Belton when they had the chance to go up for that district championship, and it was just shocking that they had made such a turnaround. 6-6 the year before last, and then obviously their first winning season in forever. I wish I could remember the exact thing.
So I actually went back and looked at it. It's been a decade since they've had a winning-ish record. This is the best record that they have posted in over a decade, and that's in large part due to K'Ron Johnson, who actually was a Baylor player, if you didn't know that, but he's really good for the program. Let's talk small school players now. Chilton 2026 linebacker Xavion Taylor. And he's one of those players in these smaller classifications that you take a look at and you're like, wow, you can stick this dude on either side of the ball and he's just going to have a nose for it. He's just going to be able to read the defense, the offense, whatever he's on. He's got a really high football IQ. And on the offensive side, as a running back, 26 carries for 104 yards and 5 touchdowns last season. But more importantly, this guy is a menace in that second line of defense. 193 tackles, 140 of them being solo tackles.
That's an insane stat.
Yeah. He's got a nose for the football. 24 tackles for a loss and 2 forced fumbles. Like I said, he's just got that insane ability to be able to read the offense and anticipate that next play, which makes him such a special linebacker for this team. And this is a Chilton team that the defense pitched 5 shutouts last year, and they only allowed an average about 10 or 12 points a game last year. Look to this guy because he's the reason for that.
That's over 72% of his tackles being solo tackles.
He's insane.
And it would be different if you had 10 and you made 7 of them. 193 tackles and 72% of them being solo.
Yeah, no,
don't
correct.
run towards him. Run away.
Yeah.
Run far. Go backwards.
Yeah, if I'm a quarterback and I see him, or if I'm any kind of skill player on the offense and I see him,
no,
I'm like,
no.
I'm going the opposite direction because that's
son. Why are you running horizontally? Coach,
literally.
have you seen that guy?
Correct, and that he is a large part due to that. But really excited to see what he can bring to the defense this year as a junior now, and he's only going to get better. Only a junior. Let's round it all out. You kind of mentioned him a little bit earlier. He's our guy. Oglesby running back and linebacker. Kyler Fawcett, now a senior, class of 2025, and 1A cover boy in the 2024 Dave Campbell's Texas Football Summer Magazine. And we got the Kyler Fawcett experience last year. He was fantastic.
He's incredible.
Put up over 2,800 rushing yards and 56 touchdowns, and on the other side of the ball, 71 total tackles, 1 interception. Dude's just a beast. And we all knew that, right? Going into the state championship game last year against Benjamin, we knew this guy is a beast. We know that he's just an athlete. I feel like he got overshined last year.
He did.
By
As
Grayson
everyone
Rigdon,
does.
Yes. Grayson Rigdon is just an anomaly, right? We saw what he did last week playing 11-man ball for the first time against Cuero. He dominated, right? He's just an athlete. Kyler Fawcett is also an athlete, but again,
he's the only person that was able to even potentially.
And that's what I was about to
Grayson
say.
Rigdon.
The ability of him that he displayed during the state championship of his ability to hang on with Grayson Rigdon, and he caused Grayson Rigdon to have a little bit of panic at some points too. I mean, kind of made him feel uncomfortable at necessary times. He was the only one that actually had the ability to do that. I feel like
100%.
in Class 1A last year.
You could look at the box scores and see that they were the only team that ever gave Benjamin fits in the first half.
Right, 100%. And
they did it through 3 quarters.
You saw what Grayson Rigdon could do when he's just stuck on any team, right? In the state in a team in the 1A classification. Well, correct. Correct. In 1A, I was going to say.
Yeah.
He did it at Strawn. He did it at Benjamin. I think Kyler Fawcett's that same way with Oglesby, and we'll talk about them here in just a second when we talk about Stonks. I don't think Oglesby's going away because they have Kyler Fawcett.
You know what the Grayson Rigdon Kyler Fawcett comparison reminds me of? If you go back to 2018 and you want to talk about the same debate that we were having between Jackson Smith-Njigba and Marvin Mims, the exact same thing. So good, so close to each other, and it felt like even though Marvin Mims broke the single season receiving record that year, the just pure mind-boggling moves that Jackson Smith-Njigba and the catches he was able to make and all that stuff. Like, Marvin Mims had more stats, but it's like a unicorn watching Jackson Smith-Njigba or Grayson Rigdon or something. But that's what that reminds me of. Both so good. It is unfair to compare them. It's unfair for the person that gets gypped and is seen as like the secondary one. Well, now it's Kyler Fawcett's year to go prove everybody like, hey, no, I am just as good.
Yeah. And honestly, stick him at 11-man. I think he'd be successful.
So there you go. Your players to watch. That was a difficult narrowing down.
It was because, I mean, like I said, Temple's got so many defensive guys that I think are going to have such a big impact on this team this year. And there was a couple quarterbacks like Hewitt Midway has a really, really good quarterback that I wanted to spotlight. But again, you got to narrow it down, and I want to be fair. So, but a lot of really, really young and great talent in the Super Centex area.
Absolutely. All right, one last thing to do. We'll do it quickly and we'll get y'all out of here. But we would be just beside ourselves, and the fans would riot if we didn't give them what they wanted. And what everybody wants is stonks.
Always try your hand up strongs.
It's America's favorite segment. It is Stonks, where we tell you, are you up, are you down, stonks good, stonks bad. And I've got one stonk for you today, Mallory. Immediately, can a Super Centex team make it back to state and win?
Okay, so make it back to state.
You can make it back to state. That's not what I'm asking.
And win.
And win.
I like that.
You have to win.
Yeah. Yes. Stonks are high in that category, and I'm going with, we just talked about him, Oglesby, because they have the guy, and because Grayson Rigdon is now playing 11-man ball in Columbus. So that takes Benjamin off the table. And I think, like we said earlier, when you have the guy in the 6-man ranks, like a guy like Kyler Fawcett that is a do-it-all, he's an athlete, he puts up stats on both sides of the ball, it is really hard to bet against a team like that. And you look back at their road to the playoffs last year, Oglesby, they were beating teams by 50-plus points. It wasn't even close. And then they run into Benjamin and Grayson Rigdon, and then they lose.
Right.
They don't have that this year. I don't think there is anything standing in Oglesby's way.
That's a tongue twister.
That's a tongue twister to make it back to state this year, and they're going to claim a title.
Okay. I like that a lot. Honestly, if you would have asked me the question and off of like first draw, I would have said Oglesby. For sake of keeping it different here. The other team I feel pretty stinking confident about being able to do it is Gordon in 1A Division 1. Rye Reed is also up there in the conversations of really, really good 6-man players.
Correct.
Striker Reed is incredible on the defense. They have been there. They're bringing back 5 starters on both sides of the ball. That defense is looking just as good in form as they were last year. Like I said, that's literally one of the best defenses we've ever seen in 6-man football. All of those people are returning. I like Oglesby off of first draw. That probably would have been the first thing with my guy Jeb Dixon that came to mind. That being said, I'll go with Gordon to be different. But both of those, the Super Centex has a good shot to bring home both 1A titles this year.
I really like that pick, and I completely agree with you. I think Gordon and Oglesby, if I had to, I'm not going to, I am going to, I don't know how to say this because I know this is a high school podcast. This is not a college podcast, but
you are going to agree
that they are going to make it to state and they're going to win it.
I think
I do a college podcast too, and I'm allowed to say other things on the college podcast that I'm not allowed to say here.
I know we're going
to. I know they're going to make it back to state, and they're going to. Oglesby's going to win it, and so is Gordon.
I feel that. And we're using our Greg Tepper therapy word, so yes. A shout out, Tep, for that.
Correct.
The only shout out you will ever get on Women Talking Football. All right, there you go. We told you, big, beefy show, but a really, really fun one. We are so back. We are so excited to be back, really getting into the weeds of football. We want to remind you to watch Dave Campbell's Texas Football tonight, our 2.5-hour red zone style show, diving into game action all across the state. If you're not able to watch it live, fret not. Go back Friday night when you get back. Go back Saturday morning, anytime throughout the weekend. It is left up for free on our YouTube page, TexanLive.com, Facebook, and Twitter. We will pin it to the top of our YouTube page. Feel free to do that. And then if you like the games that you see, TexanLive.com/subscribe. We have over 1,900 games that we broadcast live throughout the course of the year. All UIL sports, but get it now. Don't waste the entire football season and not be able to watch football. Enjoy every single Thursday, Friday, Saturday night of the season on TexanLive.com. We will be back on next Wednesday for Women Talking Football, breaking down another region of the state. We hope you will join us. For Vianney Moreno, Mallory Hartley, I am Ashley Pickle. We will see you next Wednesday on WTF, Women Talking Football.